Yeah, yeah. There's a, no, I didn't know that. There's one that was nice.
Okay, just look at me if you're basically done. Okay?
Oh, but actually.
Look at me if you're basically done with that. Okay, all right. I'm getting various looks at me, so I'll keep talking. I want to tell you guys or remind you guys of the Spark grant, which you might have heard. Oh, gosh, you might have heard of. Where's my knife? There it is. Basically, this is a grant given by the Department of Technology Licensing, and they will award between, I don't know, $1,000 and $5,000 or even more from a total of 50 grand in about a month and a half to students who have proposed a product or a project that they want to do. And this is an interesting alternative to a summer job. You can basically, just like Mitt Romney wanted people to self-deport, this is you can self-employ or self-intern. You can intern with yourself. You can pay yourself the way an internship would pay. You get to work on a project of your own choosing, hopefully with an entrepreneurial aspect to it, so a plan to go forward. The first deadline is coming up this Friday, and it's actually a very, very easy deadline. It is, all you have to do is submit a preliminary proposal, which essentially is a kind of a letter of intent. In other words, it doesn't tie you to do anything. It just says, here's my proposal, and if you pass the first filter, then you'll be asked to give a more detailed proposal. So even though there's only a few days left, plenty of time to fill this out. Okay? And basically what you got to do is you want to indicate an executive summary, and I suggest, well, I'll talk about how to fill it out, but basically, over your proposal, the technology will employ, the problem it will solve, and what your plan is to accomplish it. Okay? And probably this is more than one person, 2 or 3. Yes?
So I had a question about this where I was going to fill this out, but I couldn't really think of things I'd need money for, but is we want to pay ourselves, we want to get paid for working on this project, a reasonable thing to ask money for?
It is a reasonable thing, especially if it's if it's a summer thing. If you're going to work on it this summer instead of taking a summer job. If you're going to be working on it, if you tell people I want to do it during the semester while I'm taking 4 courses, I don't think you're going to get the grant, because that's going to be not indicate seriousness. But that's my editorial opinion.
Okay.
But if you're serious, if you go like, I got this product, I've been wanting to work on it my whole life, I'm really gung-ho, I've got these 3 people who all want to work on it too, and we think within 4 months we can have a really well-working prototype so we can raise more money, and then the department, me and they will help you with mentorship, with contacts, with connections, with training, whatever else. But fundamentally, it's a way to get seed money to start a little company. Okay, and so basically you got to put the name of the people involved. You got to find somebody to be a PI, and they don't really explain what a PI is, but I take it to be a faculty person or somebody else who's not working on the project but somehow saying it's legitimate, but I don't really know, so you should ask them what they mean by a PI. PI is lingo for principal investigator or chief. Then you want to talk about the impact, what problem are you going to solve. It's kind of redundant, so there'll probably be some cut and paste here. So again, it's basically a few paragraphs of work. The people involved, and important is to say how much money you want, because that shows that you thought about a plan. If you just say give me some money, you're not going to get it. You got to say I need $3,750 because I have 3 people. I'm going to work on it for 8 weeks, and we want to pay ourselves minimum wage, and then we have to eat. So here's what it is. Then we got to buy buy Heroku time. Just itemize what it is. Nobody's going to keep you to that itemization, but it's going to show that you gave it some thought. And then they're going to challenge you. They say, you really think you can cure cancer in only 3 weeks? We don't believe it. You're not getting the money. So you got to be plausible, but that's what goes there. Okay? And again, the threshold for putting in an application is pretty low, pretty easy to do. So I think if you have something that feels about right, feels like it may be promising, you ought to go ahead and do it. So from that, who in here How many of you think that? How am I going to do this? I'm just ask. How many of you think you might have a project you want to do? You want to propose? Okay, can you describe it?
Basically, it's a hackathon project that me and my friends worked on, where it allows you to find people to sit on planes with based on similar interests for like networking or just friendly reasons, like if you want to play chess or something. I just think it's a fun idea.
Yeah. Okay. So okay, yeah? Go ahead.
It's the project we did at 3DS.
Okay, which one again?
It's like dress code or rate my.
Oh yeah, awesome, love it.
Yeah.
Do it. You had a new name, yeah, dress code. Yeah, I remember that was great. So, and are you still in touch with your cohorts?
Yeah, we were talking about it right now.
Oh, perfect. Please do it. Who else had a hand up? Yes.
Me and Jacob and some other people, Jacob, your TA.
Yeah.
We're doing an iOS app. It's basically group, location-based group messaging app. And we went and applied to this, so
perfect.
we're going to be doing that.
Okay, so you're going to do it.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Anybody think they might, but they're not sure? Or yes, go ahead. What is your thought?
I don't have an exact project in mind yet.
Yeah.
I have a few still floating around, but it sounds interesting.
Yeah. And also, don't forget, if you want to do it, you can join with another team, right? Those of you who want to do it, I offer my services to help you in any way I can. I'll help look at your application if you want. I'll help you afterwards to tell you how to write the full proposal. I'll help you with any way you want. So take advantage of that, okay? I'd love to see people from this class and from the computer science department apply for and get grants. It's not as hard as you think. And even if you don't get it, it's a really awesome learning experience. It can go on your resumes. Yes?
How much money were they going to be able to give you without them taking equity or something?
Oh, I think that's negotiable, first of all. Okay, it's negotiable, but it's in the order of 7 or 10K.
Okay.
But I think you can make a case. They're not at all very, very locked in on it because they know it's kind of a delicate issue. So, yeah. Any other questions? All right, great, awesome. Okay, so let's go back to this thing. Let's talk about the homeworks. How did it go? First of all, how did the team deliverables go? Did you guys work out to submit it? You worked as a team. Is that hard to coordinate, or was it okay? How did it go? Anybody? You guys, how did your team do?
Our authentication?
Your submission, yes. Your team submission, yes.
Yeah,
So there were two team homeworks,
Yeah.
right? There was the authentication homework, and then there was the introducing testability. So pick one and talk a little bit of how you did it. How you guys did it.
Right now, actually, we're actually was finishing the testability on one of our survey models. One of the issues that I ran into was that I kept using the should expect syntax rather than the expect syntax.
Yeah.
The should syntax versus the expect syntax.
Yeah. Are you using RSpec or?
RSpec.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
RSpec is more difficult.
Yeah.
FYI. I recommend test unit, but RSpec is fine, but it's more difficult.
And as for authentication, Josh can talk about it.
Authentication?
Yeah.
Well, we are using Devise, which is like
I'm not saying you should. I'm not saying it's prohibited. I'm just saying it's a little more difficult.
warming up to it.
Yeah.
So I guess the authentication. It took me a while to figure out what was going on there because it's outside of the app originally, which is weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, authentication is going like you can create a user.
Yeah.
And then if you have the authenticate that's out of the page, it will make sure you're logged in or not.
So going back to this for a second, so did you all four of you put in some tests in the app?
Not yet, no.
Okay.
We have not been able to. We had some weird meetings and we plan on.
Stuff was slightly out of sync.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
Stuff was more out of sync as well.
What do you mean out of sync?
Just different places. Like we were at different places on where
Okay.
Project was about organization.
Okay, but
Yeah.
you'll take care of it?
Yeah.
Okay. The TAs back there are taking notes. Okay, next, just somebody else. Another team wants to speak up. How do they go? Yeah.
Our campus GPS.
Yeah.
I thought it went pretty well, but it was difficult to only stick to one of those things because they all kind of bleed into each other. The bottom one with this.
Then this was just this was just an idea. It was not at all locked in.
Right. But the problem I had was after we did like the validation and the authentication and stuff.
Yeah.
I couldn't really think of any tests to write.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So interesting. And your app is Campus GPS, so you couldn't think of a single test to write?
All the things that we had, like the admin, the login, and everything.
Yeah.
It's all like validated and stuff.
Yeah.
And
You could test the validation to see if the validation was valid. Yeah. Yeah, I think you should really try to write some. Everybody should write a few tests. Force yourselves. You got to get it. You have to overcome the activation energy. How about you guys? I see laughing going on there. How did it go with your project? Did you guys all write some tests?
Yeah, we did, but most of the projects, at least mine, were like validations.
That's okay. That's okay. They're the least important ones in a way, but since there's so little there yet, it's fine. The only reason they're the least important is that you're kind of verifying that Rails does what Rails says it does, and that's the Rails developer's problem. But validations, you can still put them in wrong or whatever. Another thing that people validate often is the associations. Do I actually can I add? Can I, add another floor to the building? Can I add another one? And then do I have two? That kind of stuff. So checking the one-to-one, one-to-many stuff. One more project. So how about you guys?
So we got everything working. We just had like problems.
The authentication stuff?
Yeah, because we put the login screen that was what skipped before authorizing.
Yeah.
But then creating a new user was behind that.
Uh-huh. So you couldn't log in.
It would work on one computer
Yeah.
because John was logged in, but we weren't.
Yeah.
So we kept looping onto the login screen for like an hour, and I was like, then I had to look through it.
So did you figure it out?
Yeah.
So in general, it's frustrating. Yeah, that's how you build muscles, by being frustrated, unfortunately. In general, this was the first chapter we did in the new setup, instead of typing in the commands, using it to the model, to your project. How did you feel it go? Was it an improvement? Was it the reverse of an improvement? Was it an improvement?
Sorry, I didn't catch the question.
The question was, this is the first chapter in the book that instead of asking you to type in the code in the book, I asked you to read the code in the book and then type it something like it into your product.
Oh, I think that's more reasonable.
Yeah. Did it work okay for you guys? Yeah. How about you guys? Did you like that or was it more difficult?
A lot of the stuff we didn't have implemented in the same way, so following the book wasn't exactly helpful. It just made us second guess a lot of what we're doing.
Uh-huh.
For example, we don't have a cart because we don't need a cart.
Right.
We don't have line items because we don't need it.
Right.
And it just created a lot of second guessing and
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah. Are you saying you prefer the old way better? Going that far? Not really.
I guess I'm kind of neutral towards it.
Okay, sounds good. Did you have your hand up or not? No.
Yeah, no, I like the new way of doing it. I think it sort of forced us to think about everything that we were reading in the book in terms of our project.
Yeah.
I'm going off what Saul just said. Except I guess for Barton it's a little easier because we actually have things like a cart, but it was definitely
Right.
more
Okay.
helpful, I think.
All right. Yeah. I mean, I liked it better myself. I think I haven't looked at the code obviously, but I think it's more challenging. I mean, I think it's more work for me, but it's also more work for you guys. But I think you learn more. I definitely think you learn more. Yes.
The only thing is, I mean, again, going off whoever said that it leads into all these tests bleed into each other.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's why, I mean, do you think this was, I mean, I was trying to be helpful here, maybe it wasn't helpful in the end. I was trying to sort of conceptually think, how could you divide it up into 4 people? I certainly didn't need it as a mandatory division. It was more like an idea of how you could each start in a bit of it. Okay, let's go. So actually last week, was it last week? No, yes, it was last week. I actually ran out of time, so I'm going to pick up where I left off, just to finish. And this is going to be review, because you've coded this already, you've read this already, but I have a feeling it'll be welcome review. So let's go back here to remind you. What we were talking about last week was testing. And we talked about what not to test, what to test. Don't test the same thing more in one place. Make tests isolated. I didn't actually talk about this in that detail. But we talked about the testing pyramid. Unit tests, you have a lot of them because they're fast and they're decoupled. Integration tests, you have fewer of them because they take longer to run and they're more difficult to write. But you do want and end up with a pyramid, and you definitely want some, whether you call them integration tests or UI tests, but essentially something as simple as do a get to the /URL and see that the page you get back is a login page, because just that one check essentially exercises a lot of your product. Now, if it fails, if you do a get, and I'll show you how to do that, if you do a get to the root page of your app, and then you have a test that says, make sure that there's text on this page that says, please log in, hypothetically, and it fails, it's not at all obvious why it failed. But usually, before it failed, you'll see all kinds of error messages, because some database wasn't initialized or whatever. So you do want to have some stuff at the top of the pyramid, but you definitely have this idea with more unit tests at the bottom. Okay? Now let me just cover this really quickly, because I remember now that I skipped it last time. So the question is always what to test, right? And again, this is the subject of religious battles. There's people that put a little emblem on there, and you'll see this if you look around on their GitHub, that say, 89% code test coverage. There's actual tools that'll say that if you run all the tests in this app, in this test subdirectory, 89% of the lines of code you wrote will all be exercised, and that's considered to be a badge of honor. And then there's other people that say that's nonsense, because coverage is a very misleading metric. You can cover a line of code and think that you've tested it, but you're not taking into consideration the state of the world, so the same line of code in another state, another set of variables will be failing. Conversely, there's tests that don't deserve, so some lines deserve to be tested multiple times, and some lines of code don't deserve to be tested at all. So there's the extreme of test every little thing. And then there's the other extreme of, I don't believe in testing, I put a lot of put S's in my code, and when it works, I'm done. And now we don't even talk about that, because we consider those guys to be off the plantation. You have to test. You have to have automated tests. If you're doing anything serious, and I'm definitely going to look at each of your products and make sure that you have automated tests. If you're doing anything serious, you have to have tests. The question is what to test. So here's some guidelines. It's very easy, if you're not careful and thoughtful, and you'll get to this point a little bit later on, to write tests that test the same thing in more than one place. Just because if I'm testing method A, which calls method X, Y, and Z, then if I tested methods X, Y, and Z, then the test I do for A doesn't have to verify again that X, Y, and Z did the right thing. All it has to verify is that whatever A does with them produces the right answer. So if I have method A, which calls method B, method C, X, method Y, and method Z, and I want to say A equals this, or X equals this, Y equals this, Z equals this, and I want to return X plus Y plus Z. All I need to verify is that this addition is happening correctly. That's the only thing where there might be a bug. The test for method X and for method Y and for method Z should have tested it. Now, this is a very hypothetical and fake example. In reality, it's never as clear cut, but the idea is the important thing. To think about your test, if the code you're testing is calling other code, to think what additional bugs, what additional problems this method that calls the other ones might have. So that's one principle, is don't test the same thing more than once. Another principle I don't have here, because I forgot it, is each unit test, so each of your it blocks, or whatever the block that tests, should test only one thing. It should have only one assertion, maybe two. It shouldn't have five. In other words, you shouldn't, if you're writing in mini test specs, which is what I like, you shouldn't do something like this. It works, do, at A equals method A, and I would say at A dot must equal 0, and then I do at B equals other method, other class dot method, and at B dot class dot must equal other class. So I have here one unit test which contains two assertions, which is not in and of itself bad. What's bad is that two assertions are about two totally different things. These things should be two separate tests. Can you guys over there see what I'm writing on the screen? Okay. So that's the principle of putting only one test inside of a unit test block. And that's because There's sort of a conceptual or an aesthetics reason, but there's a practical reason. If this thing throws an exception, these tests are not run. If this thing throws an, but on the other hand, if I had written it like this, and have another if block here, and so now there are two different tests. Now if this throws an exception, this still runs. So that's the practical reason. Okay? Try not to test something that is self-evidently trivial. Don't test if 1 + 1 = 2, because you're just, you're wasting mind space, you're wasting lines of code, you're wasting time. Also, don't test a library that itself is tested. Don't verify that active record does what active record says it does, because it will do it. Now, you should verify if you're using active record correctly, but it's very easy to fall in the trap to say, I added 20 records, let me make sure that there are 20 records. Well, if there's not 20 records, you got bigger problems. You have a bug in Rails, so don't test that. So what to test? My personal rule of thumb: try to test code that has common off by one errors. Everybody know what an off by one error is? Everybody's experienced them, right? Okay, and you'll know what they are. Or test code that has somewhat complicated algorithms, complicated if then else's, where the logic is easy to miss. Now, of course, big nested if then else's by themselves are a big code smell. So right off the bat, you shouldn't have those, but that's where you start thinking about tests. So if I won't say it again. And then, of course, if you have an assumption, if you believe that after this thing is run, there should be 0 records in this database, and there should be 10 records in this array, then you can write a test to verify an assumption. But that's all still at the unit test. And finally, brittle tests. So brittle tests, I think we talked about that a little bit yesterday. A test inherently, by its very nature, is intertwined, is dependent on, or makes assumptions about the structure of the code, right? So if the test, and then when you create test data, test fixtures, they too are dependent on the structure of the code. So pay attention in places where you can make create less of an intricate interdependency between the code and the test. So avoid brittle tests. I mean, I guess I can only explain this by example, because you might be thinking, well, listen, by its very nature, the test is intertwined with the code, so what the heck do you mean? And you're right, so I don't have a really good definition for that. Keep an eye out for it. I'll come back to this in another class to explain it further. We talked about mocking last time, so I won't talk about that again. We talked about fixtures, and we were in the middle of the hands-on Rails test demo when we ran out of time. So that's where I'm going to pick up. All right, and the directory is called my app. And I'll remind you what was going on. Oh, I have it open twice. How interesting. Okay. All right, so where I had gotten was, we had created, just to remember, we had created a new Rails file. We had added some gems. We had ran bundler. We created a model, which was a table of words. The model was called Word. Each one had an English and a Dutch word. And we had verified that, first of all, it passed a default test. This is legitimate. If you want to see if your test files and your spec, if your test helper.rb and your whole setup is working, I often will put something like this, which is like self-evidently, and if this runs, then I know at least I've got the whole thing set up correctly, and then I can start writing tests. And then I wrote a test which said, again, I'm testing my assumptions. I say, okay, I create a new word, and I make sure that that the methods .eng and .med are returning what I want by saying word, this variable word equals word new, eng house, Dutch house, and then make sure it's equal to that. And then I further would say, make sure that there are 2 words in the database. Now this is a very interesting thing. There's something officially wrong about that line. Officially wrong. And I'm going to tell you that I don't think anybody will see it. It violates the rule that every test should be independent and stand alone. Okay? Why is this test not independent and standalone? Anybody guess? Where is there an assumption in this test about the other tests, or a dependency in this test about the other tests? The problem is, pardon?
Must equal 3 from the other ones?
No, that's a good idea, but no. The problem with this line, it's only going to be true if this why would there be 2? Oh, actually, I remember now. Actually, I take it back. But still, you guys can still be confused. Why would there be 2 records in here? Why is this even going to pass? Is it assuming that this test has already run and that test has already run, and so there's been 2 words created? In which case, there's a terrible dependency, because obviously this will not succeed unless these tests have been run. And remember, tests should all run independently, so you can reorder them without a problem. Yes?
You have 2 tests in my fixtures?
I have 2 tests in my fixtures, exactly. So, a previous step, was I added fixtures. So we can go look in the fixtures, and we see a file called words.yml. The thing that's interesting about the fixtures, noticing that it's living inside the directory called test, is that these 2 records, and as much stuff as you want to put in here, are automatically created before each test is run, each individual unit test is run, and automatically deleted when they're done. Okay? So that's one way to create fixtures. And this syntax can be a lot more complicated. And you'll find as soon as you start writing tests that you often need some fixtures. The fixtures file here is specifically active record related, and it's specifically creating, it's going to assume that there's a database called words, because that's the file name, and it's going to create records in that database. That's the one thing it does. Which means if I have 2 databases, I have 2 YML files in this directory. Okay? All right. Yes?
What does YML mean again?
Yet another markup language.
So it's just a...
It's just like JSON. It looks 99.5% identical to JSON. The syntax basically is, in this case, the first outdented colon thing is a name for this record, and there's some places where you can use it. And then the second things are each correspond to a column in the database. And each triplet there corresponds to a row in the database. Okay? You should try these in your tests. Okay. So we did this. We see that it can be persisted. Good. Now we're going to add validation to this model. Okay? So we're going to go to, where do I add validations? Anybody? Don't whisper, just say it. Where do I add validations? What file does that go in?
In the model.
The model file. Where is the model file to be found? And what is it called? What directory is it in?
Apps.
App/models, and the file is called words or word.model. So we go in there. There's Word, and as you remember, there's nothing in it. Why? Because active record, when it first starts up, it looks for a database called a table called words. It examines it, and from the columns it finds in that database, it magically or automatically creates the accessors for those columns. That's why there's nothing in it. But we're going to put something in it. We're going to put these 2 lines. Okay? And just for fun, let's see whether I have a crib sheet about validations. I think I might. Yeah. Okay, so here's a crib sheet. Now this is a year old, so it's conceivable that they've changed since then. Okay, so we're going to add the validations, and next we're going to find out whether the validation actually did something. So I'm going to create another unit in my word test.rb, and it's going to say cannot save a word. So this is, by the way, this syntax is test unit spec. The reason you can see it's test unit spec is it says wval dot must equal false. There's none of this expect parenthesis stuff, which is what you get in RSpec. And again, here there's a whole list of predicates, all very, very easy to understand. So this is just saying, word create, so create a new word, English is university. I'm not even saying what the Dutch is, okay? So let's run the test first. I'm going to go to my command line, and I'm going to say break. And the default is to run a test. And they all succeeded, but that's fascinating, isn't it? And we wonder out loud, why is that? Oh, because, who can tell me why it is? Read the test. Read the test. Why is everything succeeding? True. What does line 27 say in English?
It has to fail.
Because we're expecting it to fail. If the validation is validating, as I want it to, I want that to fail. So success in this case is a failing validation. Okay? Not so tricky once you think about it. But let's do something to amuse ourselves, since we like to be amused. And let's put a line in here. I'm going to put a breakpoint right in the middle of the test, which is perfectly fine. But you do have to remember to say require pry and require pry bug. And now we do it again. And when it hits that test, it's going to hit the breakpoint. Okay, everybody good? And so let's take a look at this. What I'm interested in is this W thing. This W thing. So what does W say? W, if you can see, is actually a perfectly reasonable looking active record instance. Except we notice a few interesting things about this instance. Okay, it does have the English word for university as expected. It does have nil for the word because we don't know what it is. But this is interesting. It has an ID of nil. That tells you that it was not saved to the database. It was not saved to the database because it did not pass validation. If it does not pass validation, then you can go a little further. You can say w.errors, and it tells you something about the errors that it found. This is another object of class active model errors, and it says the messages are Dutch can't be blank. Dutch can't be blank. So this is what's used to put the error messages on your forms. That when somebody tries to save a file and it doesn't save, can't be blank, that's where it gets it from. Okay? This is another interesting thing you can do. I saw this recently. These are all the methods. That's not very helpful, but check this out. Minus object dot instance methods. Now that didn't help because there's a lot of anyway, I'll use it in a better example. But what I was trying to find in this, what I was trying to do was to find the error message that I know, which is called, rather the method called, let me do it again. It was called errors. Oh, let me try this trick. Get errors. Error. Star. Let this for a second. Correct. I don't think it's proper. No. I'm not sure what the syntax is here. No, didn't work. Okay, forget that. I'm going to read it the old-fashioned way. But I want to show you something. These are all the methods on an instance of active record. That's a lot of stuff, eh? How good is my visual scan? Not that good. These are all testing things. Oh, full, here we go. Got full message. Oh, dang, full messages. So basically this is a way to pull out the individual messages in English, but anyway. Okay, so the point is that after trying to save this record, which is not past validation, the ID is nil because it was not saved, and the dot error shows you at least one error happened, and here's how you can find out what it is. So we're going to, but of course this is fine, because the test is saying I want to see an error, which is why everything passes. Okay, get rid of this. Continuing. Let's implement word.random. Okay, so what do we do here? Check this out. Who wants to recite and try to figure out the meaning of the code I'm about to write? Or copy and paste, I should say. Okay. Who wants to take a crack at this? Good old Ruby. You've seen it all before. What does it do and why? I mean, you can tell what it does a little bit by the name, but why? Offset equals rand of parameter. Okay, so the way I would do this if I was trying to figure this out is I would go into my debugger and I would type try and I would say random of 25. Rand of 25. And I would run it again and I would, they're all less than 25. I guess it returns a random number between 0 and the parameter. So that's what rand does. Okay, going back to the code. Who wants to say what line 6 does? I'm going to ask somebody from this row to answer. You? What does that line do?
To generate a random number from 0 to the number put in database.
Exactly.
Then assign offset to that number.
Exactly, yes, precisely. And now, what does the next line do? I'm going to tell you that, well, we can actually do it in code again, which is kind of more fun. We can go to the Rails console. No, it's not going to work, but I'll show you anyway. I'm going to type word.all. It's going to have no words in it. Why are those two words not there? Remember the two words in the fixture? Why are they not here? A lot of people are speaking to themselves. Why are they not? Why are you guys? One of you guys? Yes. Why are the two words that I had in there in the fixtures not there? Okay, discuss it with your neighbor. Talk it over. I'll give you 1 minute.
Yeah, that's only when you actually run the test. So the database is only
First one who knows the answer, just call it out.
It's running itself.
Yes, development database.
Development database, yes. And so, next sentence.
Not in the test.
Fixtures are not available in the test. But however, I wonder, and I don't know the answer to this, what if I run this thing and say e-test? Run the Rails server in test environment. I don't know what this will do. We're going to find out. I bet it will not do it. It did do it. So I told Rails to run in the test environment, and boom, the fixtures were there. Okay? Now, the next thing I want to do, of course, there's only 2 in there, so the experiment is not very interesting. The question I was going to get to is, what does word offset do? Well, it needs a parameter.
Offset.
Pardon?
Skips rows, right?
Yes. I think word database or model name.offset means it's like model name.all. Give me all the records. Model name.offset means give me all the records but starting at this number. Okay? Play along because I'm trying to help you guys interpret Rails code. So everybody should try to answer these. So what does line 7 do? Somebody who has not spoken so far. What does line 7 do? I'm looking at you.
Yeah.
I don't think you've spoken yet.
I haven't.
Okay, so what does it do?
Unsure.
Take a guess. Okay, what does the variable offset contain in it?
An integer.
An integer which value comes from what?
It's just between 0 and the length of the...
Right? Okay. So that's what the variable offset contains.
Yeah.
So what does word.offset with that parameter give you? I just showed it to you. Anybody else? Yes?
The range of records starting from that offset number.
Exactly. And finally, dot first does what? Somebody else? Yes?
Oh, just gives out the first.
Of that range. So basically it gives the record at that offset. And that offset is a random number. So I'm returning a random word. Long story short. Okay? Good. But now it's gonna get fun. I'm gonna break new ground. I'm gonna generate a controller. Okay, boom. Let's take a look at what happened there. Well, I created a bunch of files. So let's take a look. It created a words controller that had only one action, the learn action. And it says that because if you look closely at my command, I said create a controller called words with only one action, learn. Okay? No code there, so all it created was the framework. Okay? And basically the idea here is that I'm going to add a learn action, which means that if I send to this Rails server this URL, learn, it's going to call that action. No, actually not. Yeah, learn. Let's be careful here, because the class is called words controller and the action is called learn. So really the URL probably will look more like this. Words/learn. Where can we go check what the actual URL is? Where are URL formats determined? In what file in your Rails server? Everybody together. Thank you. So let's take a look at the routes, or routes, depending on what part of the US you're from. Routes.
Somewhere in between.
Okay. Remember, all the green is comments. That's actually my routes file. Okay, it's got one line in it. What you do get with that pattern, it doesn't even have an arrow. You've seen it with the arrow? Because I'm taking all defaults. I'm saying when you see that pattern, if you don't know anything else, go to the words controller and the learn action. Okay, so we got the route and we got the controller. So let's do some playing. I assume that for at least half of you, this is not old hat, right? For at least half of you, you're learning new stuff. Am I right? Because I don't want to bore anybody. I'm going to check that graph later. If I see a lot of people bored, I'm going to be very sad. Okay. So the fun thing I'm going to do, fun for me, is that's my routes file, has almost nothing in it. I'm going to go to the words controller. And I'm going to add a breakpoint in here. Yes, you can put breakpoints in controllers too. Okay, so now I go here and I run my server. What do I have to do to get my break to hit? What do I have to do to get to that breakpoint? Somebody from you guys. What do I have to do to get to that breakpoint? You know? Guess. How do you get a get over to the server? Okay, discuss with your table.
How to get a get to the server?
Yeah.
You just type it in the browser.
Pardon?
Open that view, right? So in the browser.
Yeah, exactly. Go to that, and what route do I have to give? I'm going to have to type in here 0.0.0.0 3000 because that's the default port / words / what was it again? Learn. Nothing appears here. Why does nothing appear here?
So you don't have to.
Because the server's waiting at a breakpoint. It hasn't decided yet what to send back. Okay, it's waiting at the breakpoint. Now, one fun thing we can look at the breakpoint is the params. if you remember params, so the params is how the Rails system and the routing system in particular prepares the world for the action. And what are the things you may want to know? You may want to know you're in controller words and action learn, nothing else.
Well,
yes?
How would you, for example, then pass another controller?
Make it to go to a different controller?
For example, yeah.
You would, the routes would be, you would change the routes to something that looks a little bit like this, although I don't know, I always have to look up the syntax. You would go something like hero controller.
And then
Found action. Okay, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. And what if I want to pass more information with my params?
Okay, so there, what you would do, let's get back to the command line.
So I want
to kill this and get out of this. And now I'm going to type, instead, question mark, foo equals 100. Now, if I type params, see that? Foo equals 100. It parsed the question mark and realized it was a param. Another option you have, what's the other option you have? It's a change to the routes line. Another way to get another parameter into that action. Talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors. Combine your brain. Look it up on the web. 30 seconds. Another way to get a parameter into the action. Hint. Anybody have something?
When you can pass it through the other controller, like locals or something, and then I'll need the params for that page.
Hint. Hint. It's going to look like this. Slash words. Slash learn. Slash 100. That's what it's going to look like. That's the other way. Did you know it? So let's try that. I'm going to change the routes. I'm going to do slash colon R10. Okay, save it. You do have to stop the server and restart it so it'll see that. Okay, what went wrong here? I have a syntax error. And the syntax error, basically, missing controller key on routes. Okay, maybe when you go that way, you have to actually say words found. See if that works. Okay. Now, if I go not slash foo, or I can say slash word slash Brandeis, doesn't have to be a number, question mark, Eric equals 999. Okay, did not like it because
Brandeis
words. Oh, words first. I have to put the random, was it? Words learn slash random. Okay. Now if I type params, I'm going to see two parameters. What are they? Say it out loud. Parameter number one I will see is
Brandeis.
Pardon?
Brandeis.
And that is going to be equal to what?
Eric equals 999.
Huh?
And the other one is going to be
Eric 999. Exactly. So let's take a look. There it is. Eric is 999 and Artem is Brandeis. So there's, what's wrong? I keep making it bigger. You still do that. You need glasses? How big do you need it?
That's fine.
Notice here, I'm passing in two different parameters into the URL. Learn slash Brandeis is one parameter. Question mark Eric equals 999 is the other parameter. Go back to the routes. And slash word slash learn. Artem, that gives me what the name's going to be. Okay, boom.
So I can do like another slash and then like school, for example.
You could, but there's an art to designing your URL. Okay, but technically you could do all that. Okay. Let's continue. Can't believe it. I'm still not done with this example. All right. So going back, so we have till 150, right? Okay. All right, so continuing now. So now we added, so we're going to actually do what we meant to do instead of all these other experiments I was doing, which is, oh, there it is. Okay, word at random. So now really when I say self at random, what I'm going to do is actually return a random word from my collection. So let's first test it by hand. So I'm going to run my server again, and I'm just going to run it the easy way and see what happens. And who can tell me why this happens? Oh. I get a big error. And the error says, always remember, read the error message. Always read the error message. Don't get intimidated by all this garbage and think you can just go play with the code. Go back to the top and see, no route matches get, and particularly, come on, page. words/learn. So we go back to our routes, because whenever you see that, the problem is in your routes. And indeed, it's got all this junk in it. So we're going to get rid of all the junk again. Save it. Restart say what? Oh, yeah, thank you. And kill it. Restart it. Go over here. Type this in again. And we hit the breakpoint. And if we do params here, we see what we expected. Okay, good. I didn't do the code change I wanted to do. Okay, go on. Going back here, and going back to our script. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to have the words controller, instead of doing nothing, use that method, that class method on the word model. Oh, this is the wrong place. Thank you very much. No, I want to be in the action in the controller. Instead of this, I'm going to actually put a line of code. This line of code says, it's funny where I got this. I'm going to put word.new instead. Yeah, okay. Just for the fun of it. I'm going to purposely put a mistake in. And now I'm going to go to test, and I'm going to write a controller test, or what I've called an integration test before. Okay? It's a new kind of test. So you go into your test directory under controllers, and you find the words controller test. And actually you can read this, and it basically says, this is written in Minitest, not Minitest spec. The way you change it into Minitest spec is just by saying if, rather describe here, which is just syntactic sugar, so I won't worry about that right now. And it says all this test knows is when I call this action, rather when I send a get to the server, it should return something with a success code. Okay? Very simple. It makes no assumption about what else it does. It just returns a success code. So if I go to my, and I call, wake up, and I call rake, still there. That was in the test. So I need to go fix the test. Get rid of this pry. Oh, I didn't save them, okay. And all the tests pass, including the new one, which was calling the controller. Okay? But let's make the test a little bit more specific. Let's say, and here's where it gets interesting. Okay, now we're going to do a stub. And this is going to be a little bit tricky, so let's take it apart step by step. Okay. So, the first line, I'm going to just recite this to you. Here's the test we're talking about. It's going to test the random test, the random word, not the method on words, which is generate a random word, but the action in the words controller, which calls the model. So here's a case where I'm testing something that was already tested by somebody else. First thing I do is I create an instance of the word class with these two parameters, nose and nous. That's a word. So this is an instance of word. Then, and here's where it gets interesting. Remember we talked about stubs and mocks? Who can give a quick reminder definition of what a stub or a mock is? Anybody? Discuss with your neighbor. See if any of the, put your brains together. What is it? You remember what a mock was? Yeah. Yeah. What is a mock? Who wants to volunteer? Yes.
It just holds like a dummy object that does stuff that you define it to do.
Yeah, exactly. And the purpose is to not actually need to instantiate the real thing. So the way in so the mock and stubbing is a general category of things called test doubles. It's a universal concept. You find it in Java, JavaScript, all the languages. Anybody who does testing, they do mocks. It's a concept you really need to master. In this particular language, what you do is you say, word class, I'm going to temporarily override your random method to always return target word. Okay? I'm going to temporarily override random to always return target word. And that's interesting because as a result of this, I'm not testing anymore whether the random method on word works or not, because I've overridden it. It always returns the same object. What object? The one that was created here. And then within this context, I'm going to send a get to the server, and I'm going to say the target word must be set to the @word parameter. Okay, this is a little tricky. Let me first run it, and then I'm going to explain it. Hopefully the video will work well. So we run it. It passed. That doesn't help much. So let's study this controller again. All this controller does is assigns a value to the @word instance. Normally what would happen next is a view would be displayed, and the view would contain somewhere in it @word. It would say the random word is blah, blah, blah. Okay? In fact, we could quickly whip together a view to show you that. Because right now, if we look inside of the views, under the words, there's learn.html, it has nothing in it. But if instead I say h1, the random word is % equal @word, like that, and then end of h1, and I run this server, remembering to say environment test, otherwise we don't have those fixtures. And I go to that place. Okay. And I run it again, and I get a different one. What the heck is this? Why is it doing that? Yes?
That's the memory address of the object?
Yep. And what do I have to fix to make it work the way I want it?
Did you p.word or is it puts that?
It was @p. Okay, so it's so we look at what file are you thinking about?
I'm thinking a controller.
Okay, let's go look at the controller. There's two ways to do this, but that's a legitimate way. Okay, so it says right now @word equals word.new, right?
Yeah.
And so therefore @word is the @word variable is assigned to an object of an instance of the word class. And when you print one of those, it prints an address, because how do you print an object? So what would you do? What are some of the things you could do to make that make sense? Mumble? Anybody? Yes?
You do the params and then output in and then.
What do you think, params?
Yeah, you access it.
You could, but you don't have to access params. But you're right. See, what you could do is, you could do a few things. The most logical way to code it, but remember, how would you, in general, we have this word class. How would you print one out? Remember, every word has two words in it, English and Dutch. How would you print it out? It should say English is this, Dutch is that, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say puts word dot eng.
Yeah, but you wouldn't say puts. Okay, what you would do is this. I think the best design would be that you would say this. Okay? Okay? So it's a little web page that says English for this word is this and Dutch for this word is that. Okay? So now we made that change. Let's try refreshing this page. And nothing happens. And we wonder aloud why. Well, I'm going to just stop the server and restart it, because I did save the file. I did, yes. I would have thought that it would see that. This is interesting too. Huh, mysterious. Okay, this, kill this. Okay, there it is. The random word is very small, English and Dutch. Nothing's coming out. Why is nothing coming out? Because... Say what?
They can't find the word. It's new.
Because when I, in this controller, look at this code.
No, it's new.
It's new, right? Pardon?
Just a new object
Without any values. So really what I should do here is do that randomly. Now, very interesting that it's not picking this up. Let me just look at my server. I'm a little bit confused. Maybe this browser is just being too damn clever. Nope. Because notice this, by the way, this is a good debugging tip. I'm refreshing this, but I'm not seeing any new lines down here. So for some reason it's not going to the server. I don't know exactly why. It smells like a cat, like it's just deciding it doesn't have to refresh it. So I'm just going to kill the server, start it up again. There we go. Can you see that? We only have two words in the database. Okay? So, going back. Okay, I think the last thing. Let's look at this. So the point here is that when this controller action called learn in the controller called word is invoked, it does only one thing. It puts the variable at word with a certain value in it. That's all it does. So if you're going to test the controller in isolation, you don't want to test the view and you don't want to test the model. You just want to make sure that when this controller action finishes, it has set up at word to be the right value. That's the test. Okay? So if you look at the test that I wrote a little while ago, it's actually over here. I thought I So we talked about this a minute ago. Oops. So what it does is it creates a word. It stubs out the random method out of word, makes sure it always returns the same thing, sends a learn action to the get controller, and then uses this thing which says verified as I expected that that controller assigned to the instance variable word the value target word. Okay? So that's how it's verifying that that controller did what it was supposed to do. This is a little difficult, right? A little difficult, but I would suggest that you try to understand it. If you need to go back and look at the video, and make sure you write at least one of these kinds of tests in your product, maybe more. The beauty is, if you have a product that's a lot bigger, this one invocation will have touched a lot of parts of the code. So that's the top of the pyramid, the integration or even UI level tests. Okay. I think I want to stop here. Actually, I'm at the end. I point you to these references. If you're trying to learn stuff, these are all very good references. You can Google or you can just go click around these. Okay, good. So now I'm caught up. So I basically missed one lecture, but that's okay. We got nothing but time. Okay, so that's the end of yesterday's class. Tomorrow's class, Friday's class, I should say, is going to be about authentication. I'm going to not use the lab for that because remember, by the way, the teams that are with with Mike Crayley and with Eddie are tomorrow. It's going to be just like last week. Please prepare well, use the time well. When they leave, I'm going to ask them to give a little feedback on how it went. And I wanted to say they were well prepared. I wanted to say they've made good progress since I first saw them. And I wanted to say I have high hopes that this is going to be a successful project. Okay? So you guys, the four teams are going to meet with them tomorrow. And in the meanwhile, I'm going to cover some other stuff which is important but not as crucial. Okay? It's going to be a little bit of review. As far as homework for tomorrow is concerned, let's take a look at that real quick. I'm going to change it on the fly. Or I don't have anything. No, I don't have anything. Perfect. So you're all welcome to use tomorrow's homework slot, if you're not one of the teams, to keep finishing what you didn't finish today. Okay? But please do make sure you have some each person writes some tests for the product, and make sure that you guys get authentication to work up to the level of what the chapter does. And then on Friday, I'm going to cover authentication again, this time with me typing in my own code. Okay? Any questions left? Any issues? Okay, before you go, one other little annoying test. One little annoying test is go back to TeachBack. One last thing before you go, it'll take you half a second. Go back to TeachBack. Click on the class. Go back to TeachBack. Click on the class. Okay, and find the. Are you on the class? And then go back to the. Let's see. I think it's feedback. No, not that. It's terrible. Are you on this? It's really confusing. I didn't put it. Okay, click on end of class feedback. That's it. And then write a sentence. End of class feedback, write a sentence.
Where do you see end of class feedback?
I don't know. You didn't register for the course.
Oh, I see.
Okay. Go to
which one?
Okay, go to.
Wait, I rated it 4 stars. Why isn't it 3 now?
Let's see.
Oh, let's see. Average. Oh, why?
If you can do it. If you can't, don't worry about it. This product has problems.
Maybe you should take 105 or.
I know. Oh, here it is. This is what you want. This is what you really want. Activity questions. I got 5 responses. Awesome. Keep on doing it. Let's get to 10. 6, 7, 8, 9. Come on. Do I hear 9? Boom. 10.
Test.
Thank you. Anybody else can add, of course.
What do we have to do again?
All of these ones have to be recreated.
So remember, so for Wednesday, teams prepare, everybody else use the time for the lab's time to do more, to finish what you didn't finish today. See ya.
It's gonna create a user, it's gonna check all the login stuff.
Okay.
It's based on what's in the value user.